Thank you for being with us for this high-level roundtable, looking at the food system of Ethiopia. We'll start with introducing His Excellency, Dr. Mandefro, who will be moderating today's session. Thank you very much.
Good evening and good afternoon for those who are outside Ethiopia. Your Excellency, Dr. Leah Tadesse, Ministry of Health. Your Excellency, Dr. Fikru Ragasa, Ministry of Agriculture. Colleagues, friends in the room, and those of you who are online, thank you very much for joining us in this high-level roundtable discussion, which can help Ethiopia to understand what does a food system look like in Ethiopia, where does it performs well, and where does it fails, what are the changes required to transform the food system, why do we need to transform food system in the country, in the region, and globally, and transform to what and how. So at the end of this meeting, we expect some sort of a framework or a roadmap for changing the food system with actionable items for making these required changes in the food system. So we have high-level professionals in the area to help us frame our thinking, our experience and knowledge using their global experience. The first in the row is Sir John. He is a chair of global panel on ag and food system, followed by David Navarro, who is a senior advisor on food system dialogue. Then we will have Excellencies Dr. Leah and Dr. Fikru to give us opening remarks representing Ministry of Health and Ministry of Agriculture. Then we will have three technical papers by Professor Patrick, Dr. Freo, and Dr. Sisai. Finally, we expect the Ethiopian investment will be repurposed, and we are going to refine our policy and regulatory frameworks that can help reform, produce, and consume food that is healthy for the people as well as for the planet. Then we might redesign business models to prioritize environment, social, and financial outcomes. And we are going to set better standards of how actors in the value chain, commodities can target environment, social outcomes along the financial returns. Changing consumer behavior to shift their demands to environmentally and socially responsible, as well as nutritious products. So with that overview, I would like to call upon Sir John to give us a brief remark. John, the floor is yours.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Sir Excellency Dr. Manfredo. Look, I'm delighted to be here today, and I'm delighted that this has been organized, and we really do owe thanks for the teams in both in Ethiopia and in London and elsewhere, indeed, for organizing this in such an efficient way. We're delighted to be supporting Ethiopia's food system dialogue, and I hope we really will be trying to help, not just at this meeting, but subsequently. I should probably start off by saying a few words about the panel. It was started in 2013 around the Food System Summit, and His Excellency John Kafur and I were made co-chairs. John was co-chair with me until September of last year, so 7 excellent years, and he has been an an immense source of support. But a few about the global panel. We have a number of people here who are attending. We have Emmy Simmons, we have Tom Arnold, we have Rhoda Peace Tumasuni, and myself. And I think that we also have the secretariat led by Sandy Thomas. And then, as you know, we're also going to have the privilege of hearing what Patrick Webb has to say. Just a few words about the panel. We have a very distinguished panel in Africa. We have Akin Adesina, President of the African Development Bank. Rhoda, I've already mentioned. We have Agnes Kalibata, who is the Agri-President of the UN Food Systems Summit. And this is a very exciting period for thinking about the issues of agriculture and nutrition with the various summits that are actually coming up. We've also obviously had the opportunity and have been delighted to have it to talk with David Nabarro, who is a high-level envoy dealing with this process. And we hope to be able, as part of the global panel and our secretariat, to help as we move forward. Now, Patrick is going to take you through some of the things in detail, but there are really major problems, and I think it's been brought sharply into focus by the current epidemic. I see that we are all fortunate because we are essentially joining the meeting from at home, so we don't have to wear masks, but this has been a terrible epidemic, and the costs of failing food systems, not just from the epidemic and the pandemic itself, but from the failing systems. And the basic cost, somewhere between 12 trillion a year to the world at large. Now, Patrick is going to present shortly, but Ethiopia itself has made really important progress over recent years. Consistent and impressive GDP growth, stunting decreasing substantially over the last 20 years, and agricultural productivity increasing substantially. So to an extent, Ethiopia can be proud of its progress to date, but more needs to be done. And everybody, I think, around here today accepts that. So we're here to thinking about identifying some opportunities and game-changing actions. And one of the programs that we had developed was our foresight report. Patrick is going to present on that. But I think the important thing about the foresight report is it proposes challenges and makes recommendations, but those recommendations are very much focused on whether it's to governments, to donors, to the commercial world, or to scientists. And I think that's really important. And we have got, I think, a unique opportunity in the next year to think about how the food systems can be taken forward. And the summits will all contribute to that. But once they've finished, we really will need to be thinking too about that, making certain that the rhetoric coming from the summits is underpinned by real action. And so I think this is one of the basic reasons for having this roundtable dialogue. So thank you very much once again from me on behalf of the global panel. And I now will pass back to Dr. Manfredo, and he will, I think, then look to Patrick Webb to make his presentation. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, John, for a very good, thank you very much, John. Very comprehensive framework of the roundtable discussion, and it has a past, a current, and a future. So can we have David? David, do you want to run it now, or
yeah? Thank you. Well, thank you very much indeed. I'm not. I hope I'm not coming in at the wrong time. I just wanted to say to you, Dr. Manfredo, and to other colleagues in the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Health of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia for organising this event. And thank you to the Global Panel on Agriculture and Food Systems for Nutrition for what they're doing and for the opportunity to be here, and real expressions of gratitude to all the panel members, particularly Sir John Beddington and Sandy Thomas. I just wanted to say one thing. I've been working with colleagues in Ethiopia on the transformation of food systems now for many years, and I'm most impressed by what I'm seeing happening. I've always been a big fan of the Sequenta Declaration as an example of how to link together food security, nutrition, and sustainable agriculture under one umbrella. I just think what we're about to discuss today is absolutely vital, because we're working together on what needs to be done to transform food systems. But as Sir John just said, in a way, the next step of actual implementation in its various different ways is going to be an important challenge. I'm involved in a program of structured multi-stakeholder dialogues in different countries around the world to think about the long-term future of food systems so that they are sustainable and equitable. And I'm really pleased that this event is indeed couched in the context of the national dialogues in Ethiopia. And I look forward to continuing to work with colleagues in Ethiopia and doing this together with people in the UN country team and beyond as you take this work forward. So just a real big shout out, gratitude and statement of commitment to continue working with you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. David, for the inspiring remarks. Good, yeah. Then we will have Her Excellency Dr. Leah Tadesse to make official opening remark.
Good evening, everyone here, and good afternoon and good morning to our global participants. Your Excellency, State Ministers, Dr. Fikru Ragasa and State Minister Ato Wendale, Your Excellency Dr. Mandefro, Excellency UN Advisor to the General Secretary, UN Coordinator for Scale-Up Nutrition, Global Panel Board members, and colleagues from Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Health, development partners, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, on behalf of the Ministry of Health, I would like to say it's really a great pleasure to be co-hosting this high-level roundtable to set the scene for the UN Food System Summit. As a few speakers mentioned, Ethiopia has indeed made progresses in reducing undernutrition in the country in the past few decades, and especially when we see between 2000 and 2019, the prevalence of chronic malnutrition or stunting has decreased from 58% to 37%, and underweight children have declined from 41 to 21%, with wasting also decreasing from 12 to 7% during the same period. However, it is clear that Ethiopia's burden of undernutrition and micronutrient deficiencies is still among the highest in sub-Saharan Africa. The 2016 National Micronutrient Survey has indicated micronutrient deficiency is at the level of public health concern. More than half of children at the age of 6 to 59 months, around 57%, and 24% of women aged 15 to 49 were anemic. In addition to macronutrient and micronutrient deficiencies, Ethiopia is also facing increasing overweight, obesity, and diet-related non-communicable diseases such as diabetes and hypertension, and cardiovascular diseases that are emerging challenges, particularly among the urban population. For children and pregnant and lactating mothers, several indicators have been devised to monitor the quality of diets. And according to the 2016 Ethiopian Demographic Health Survey, only 12.8% of children between 6 to 23 months of age made the minimum diet diversity of 5 groups out of 8. Also of great concern is the limited consumption of nutrient-dense foods from groups like animal source foods, fruits, and vegetables. And such diets devoid of animal source foods, fruits, and vegetables have been associated with poor child growth, micronutrient deficiencies, compromised immunity, and poor cognitive outcomes as well. Besides other socioeconomic factors, cultural and religious practices have often been given also as reasons for limiting consumption of nutrient-dense foods, dense diet by children of Ethiopia. To improve the nutrition status of its citizens, especially the first 1,000 days plus, the government has endorsed the food and nutrition policy around 2 years ago, and its implementation strategy is currently under development with all the relevant sectors involved. Ethiopia also made a 15 years commitment to end stunting for under 2 years through the Sabota Declaration, has developed various guidelines and strategies for prevention and treatment of acute malnutrition and micronutrient deficiencies, and is conducting 1,000 days plus public movement for social and behavioral change, and is also leading the scale-up nutrition country-led processes to end all forms of malnutrition. So today's and upcoming dialogues that we will organize is expected to position Ethiopia for the Global Food System Summit and subsequently for the Nutrition for Growth Summit that will be held later in the year in Japan. And these dialogues have come while we are also making preparations to implement the Sabota Declaration expansion phase into other regions and kick off the implementation of the food and nutrition strategy. So we are really hopeful that whatever recommendations and solutions that will come out through these dialogues will accelerate the ongoing efforts and give new insights that will enable the Ethiopian food system to deliver diversified and healthy food in markets, improve consumption patterns, especially during the first 1,000 days, which is a critical window of opportunity, and prevent the rise in overweight and obesity and diet-related non-communicable diseases. In this regard, I would like to affirm that the Minister of Health is committed and will continue this commitment to support this process and continue also to closely work with the Ministry of Agriculture, other sectors, the SAN Secretariat, the advisor for the Secretary General, development partners to come up with the Ethiopian position paper that will enable our country in the attainment of healthier diets, improving nutrition and health, livelihood of the population, and ultimately sustainable development for the nation while avoiding any negative impact on the environment as well. So I wish us all a successful deliberation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Dr. Leah. So that is the health dimension. Now we will have the agriculture dimension from Dr. Fikru, who is representing Minister of Agriculture. And Ato Wendale is a State Minister of Agriculture, is here to link health and agriculture. Dr. Fikru.
Good evening, good afternoon or good morning for the virtual participants. Your Excellencies, Dr. Leah Tadesse, Ministry of Health, Ato Wendale from State Ministry of Agriculture, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I feel honored to welcome you to the first high-level roundtable entitled Positioning Food Systems to Deliver Sustainable, Affordable, and Healthy Diets for all in Ethiopia, and setting the scheme for the UN Food System Summit, with the aim of setting the scheme for the Global Food System Summit. As we all know, Ethiopia has rich policy environmental programs relevant to the food system transformation. Food and nutrition policies and strategy, agricultural growth program, national horticulture development and marketing strategy, livestock master plan, nutrition sensitive agriculture are some of them. Our country faces a number of challenges across the entire food system, from production to consumption, and in ensuring environmental sustainability. Recommendations and solutions that will come out of such kind of global and national dialogue should be positioned within existing policies and programs, frameworks to facilitate the actions being taken up and inform efforts to be taken in the transforming Ethiopian food system holistically, and needs to provide solution for the challenges that our country is currently facing. Specifically, the solutions need to resolve challenges of the food system that we are currently facing, such as limited, diversified, and nutrient-dense food production, and access to appropriate inputs, high post-harvest losses, even ever-increasing price of nutrient-dense foods, food safety and processing challenges, natural resource degradation, and loss of biodiversity and pests. Dietary guidelines recommend consumption of dense diet to ensure optimum health and well-being. Dietary-related factors are the major cause of stunting and all other forms of malnutrition in Ethiopia that the food system transformation needs to address them. We expect this process will enable us to identify challenges and opportunities that can inform actions for a positive food system transformation across the 4 policy priority actions: improving the availability of nutrient-rich and stable foods and ease of access, affordability of healthy diet to all, ensuring sustainability and empowering the consumers to make more informed food choice. By the end of today's roundtable discussion, we expect to have key recommendations and directions that will help the government to further develop the background paper into the Ethiopian food system position papers to inform the Ethiopian Food System Summit, the United Nations Food System Summit, and the Nutrition for Growth Summit. Hence, we look forward your all national and global stakeholders' contribution for this important work. Finally, I would like to recognize the organizers for this high-level roundtable, and special thanks goes to the global panel on agriculture and food systems for nutrition and other development partners and experts who provided technical and financial support for making this first roundtable dialogue on food systems success. Having said this, I wish you successful deliberation, and the high-level roundtable is officially open. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fukru. So we have perspectives of the government from the policy and the strategic point of view. Now we are moving towards a technical paper. So the technical presentation will be started by Professor. So we have Professor, and then Dr. Freo and Dr. Sisai. So we will do it in one shot. So the floor is yours, Professor.
Hello, Dr. Manfredo Negusi. Salam, Tanasteling. I will do this in English. It's such an honor, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Very proud to be here, to be able to talk to you a little bit about some of the work of the global panel, and to be as supportive as we can to the important dialogues that are happening in Ethiopia. I lived for several years in Ethiopia in the 1980s when resolving and preventing famine and serious rates of stunting and malnutrition were the primary concerns. And look where the country has come in the intervening 30 years or so, 35 years. Huge strides, real commitments translated into concrete actions that have really transformed the landscape for nutrition and food and agriculture in the country. And it's for that reason that I'm very optimistic that Ethiopia and the government and its people can step up to this next round of challenges, because we do face some serious new challenges now. Now, I'm going to share my screen if that becomes possible and feasible. I'm here talking on behalf of the global panel. Can everyone see the slides now? Just to check, okay.
Yes.
And focusing on the insights from the latest Foresight report, which came out just a number of months ago. That was only one output of the global panel. The global panel has produced 2 Foresight reports and a wide range of policy and technical reports and briefings intended to support the thinking and the creative action investments of policymakers, in particular in low and middle income countries, to help and guide based on best science and best practice, sharing best practice. And this second Foresight report, we felt was as important as anything we have ever done before. The messages of the report are, of course, global, but they absolutely are important for Ethiopia. They include things that we are, all of us, every one of us, facing impending planetary crises that impact rich and poor countries alike, rich and poor consumers and producers in those countries alike. And those impacts relate to the health of people and planet alike. Diets and the focus on quality of diets as the core of food system transformation represents a key link, almost a bridge that links what goes on at the health of human populations and health of the planet. So the choices of diets, of what foods go into the diet, the choices of how foods are produced, what is done in terms of trade of those foods, have real implications. There's lots of problems. You know many of them. But we also firmly believe that action is not just urgent, but it's possible, and that achieving sustainable healthy diets for everyone has to be a core agenda, not just within the SDGs, but going forward beyond that. It has to be a priority that if we are ever to address both planetary and human health issues together. Everyone has a role in this, all nations. Some issues have to be tackled at a global level, others at local level. And this isn't just for governments and policymakers. The private sector, the individual consumer all have roles to play. So while this sounds complex and it may seem daunting, there are opportunities for steps, transition steps that take us in the right direction. But we have to identify those and act on those swiftly. So just a couple of slides to talk about the issues. So on the environmental side, more and more we are understanding how not just agriculture, but food systems as a whole contribute to water pollution, to soil resource loss, and even up to 28% of estimated of global greenhouse gas emissions. It's food systems. So the way we do agriculture, the way we trade, the way we process food and retail food, and so on. And there are different impacts in different ways, right? In terms of water use, staple foods play a great role, a huge role in uptake of water and depletion of water resources. Animal source foods actually are quite important in fruits and vegetables. Greenhouse gas emissions, well, we all know that it's the production and maintenance of animal source production globally, where it's inefficient, plays a supremely important role, and phosphorus application in other areas. So what we choose to eat is very closely linked to what we choose to produce, and both can be changed to try and mitigate some of these environmental impacts. At the same time, the damage that is being done to human health, Dr. Leah mentioned the implications of suboptimal diets. Now, very few countries in the world are even close to achieving suboptimal diets. And while this may seem like a luxury for low and middle income countries, it's absolutely not. Addressing the quality of diet matters for addressing stunting, wasting, micronutrient deficiencies, just as it does for tackling the diet-related chronic diseases, diabetes, stroke, heart disease, and so on, that are growing in leaps and bounds, even in low and middle income countries. So that's why laser focus on diet quality achieved through food system transformation is at the core of our agenda. And as you can see there, Ethiopia right there in the middle, neither the worst nor the best in terms of mortality attributable to suboptimal diets. But Ethiopia can do better. Diets are shifting. We all know this. We all see this with urbanization and income growth. If you take that blue line as being the optimal recommended level for different types of foods and nutrients, the orange and yellow circles represent low income and lower middle income countries. You can see nuts and seeds consumption, milk consumption, extremely low to the left of that particular bar. Omega-3 and other fatty acids, mainly derived from seafood, but also flax and other sources, well below. Vegetables, even, well below what they should be. And on the flip side, things like salt and added sugars, particularly in sugar-sweetened beverages, even in low and lower middle-income countries, well beyond to the right of that level. So diets are shifting. They're not shifting in ways that are necessarily improving diets. Now, to achieve sustainable healthy diets, so healthy diets that are generated sustainably, we have to ensure that consumers can access and pay for those diets. So affordability of healthy diets has become a major issue. And as we know, nutrient-rich foods are often more perishable, more difficult to transport, and often more expensive than staples. They're often more expensive than sugar and oils and fats and salts, right? So trying to find ways to rebalance prices and increase the availability of nutrient-rich foods has to be a major agenda issue for Ethiopia, which, as you see, is at the very high end, where the cost of achieving affordable nutritious diets is almost out of the reach of large numbers of consumers. We have to tackle that. We have to change that. Just looking at some of the issues of relative prices, this is just a time series from Ethiopia. As you can see, over time, Ethiopia has done really well, in fact, of lowering and suppressing the price of staples, grain, roots, tubers, teff, obviously, but others. Over time, we know that a lot of the policies, a lot of the investment in infrastructure and trade has managed to make staples more affordable to more people. That's great. It had to be done. But at the same time, we're seeing foods that are rich in vitamin A, we're seeing those prices going up quite significantly over time. And those are the kinds of foods, along with legumes and vegetables, that we need to see more available and less costly. On the flip side, oils and fats, yes, oils and fats are not necessarily bad, but too much oils and fats used for frying. The price of oils and fats has gone down and stayed down significantly over time, whereas the price of eggs, which are rich in vitamin A and other nutrients, has actually gone up. Now, this changes over time. There's a lot of variability, but we have to understand that it's relative prices and the composition of the diet as a whole that really matters here. That's why, I'm not going to dwell on this too long, but that's why the global panel has framed food system transformation in this one diagram, which you will all have access to. At the core is achieving healthy, sustainable diets. But to get there requires multiple sectors of the government and of the economy to work together, as well as public and private sector. It's wonderful that already in your room you have both ministers from health and agriculture. But to achieve this goal requires additional engagement with ministers from ministries of trade and finance and education and sustainability and so on. To get the system fixed, to move towards transformed food systems, a healthy, sustainable diet has to be desirable to all consumers, right? And I'm starting there rather than the production side. It's actually really at the demand side. If consumers do not want to spend their scarce resources on healthy, sustainable diets, then we will not achieve our goals. So ensuring sustainability matters, and that's where private sector has a major role, advertising, food-based dietary guidelines, and so on. But if there is demand, there still has to be affordability. And affordability isn't just about rebalancing relative prices, it is that, nor is it about suppressing prices. It's as much about increasing purchasing power so that there is more money to spend on healthy, sustainable diets. So the design of social protection, pro-poor growth, targeted investments for the poor, all of these matter not just in poverty reduction or job creation, but in this agenda of achieving food system transformation. For foods to be both desirable and affordable, they have to be accessible, which means once they are produced, they need to be available to the consumer through efficient markets and efficient reduction of food loss and waste through refrigeration, electrification, and processing and storage systems. But it also means that trade policy mustn't be incoherent with the policies in the country of improving human health and the planetary health. And to, of course, make those foods accessible, we have to have them available, which means that public investment has in agriculture sector, in all forms, in all the sectors where there is research, R&D, and the promotion of agricultural production, new jobs, and so on, we have to ensure that nutrient-rich foods are part of that equation. Just as Dr. Leah Tadesse mentioned, we have to have more fruits, more vegetables, more legumes, more whole grains into the diets of Ethiopians. Possible game changers. Now, many of you know that the UN Food Systems Summit is in the process right now of trying to get countries, get individual governments to propose their game-changing solutions to get us there. The global panel has offered a range of options that it feels could make a difference. One of them is repurposing subsidies in the agriculture sector, not just the focus on R&D, but services in agriculture, investments in rural finance, and so on. How do we achieve greater improved use of public investments in the promotion of availability and affordability of nutrient-rich foods? Food-based dietary guidelines. We're lucky that Ethiopia is a country that has just invested a lot in putting forward new food-based dietary guidelines. We argue that it's not just about, they should not just be consumer-centric. They really should be science-based, but equally policy-maker focused, so that the food-based dietary guidelines are not just a suggestion of what consumers should eat, but the basis for allowing policies across government to be more coherent to make that possible. Because if you work backwards from what people should eat, then the policies should coherently make that possible. Public procurement, a huge power to allow for healthy food choices, particularly in meals and other institutions, as well as food for work and employment-based social safety nets, not just seeing food as a basic minimum resource or an income transfer, but as a way to promote understanding of and access to healthy food choices. I've talked about rebalancing food prices. Part of that will come through higher supply side issues in terms of nutrient-rich foods versus staples. Careful selective exploration of fiscal instruments, subsidies, taxes, and others to incentivize healthy products can also be there. Social protection, I've just mentioned, employment-based social programs and others, not just about poverty and hunger, but the goal of nourishing people with foods that have been produced sustainably. Trade policies, and of all of this should be based empirically in what is the latest evidence from science and best practice. What is cost effective in terms of policy choices? I'm going to quickly go through just a few of these. I mentioned fiscal policies. They don't work everywhere, but they do work in many places. And there's a lot of room for innovation and experimentation, particularly in low-income countries, taxes, targeted subsidies, ceiling prices, floor prices, to try and get more of the fresh, nutrient-rich foods available to consumers, especially urban poor, who are an rising number of consumers, so that is a choice, not just processed packaged foods of little nutrient content. I mentioned food-based dietary guidelines. Ethiopia's is not there yet because this was done as of last year. There's most food-based dietary guidelines around the world that we were able to look at were outdated, not based on best science, ill-equipped to inform policymakers on what should be done differently, and poorly designed to communicate healthy dietary choices to consumers. So a lot more can be done in this space. The power of public procurement should not be underestimated. So ensuring healthy, sustainable diets in schools, in hospitals, in prisons, yes, all institutions, work canteens, healthy diet options are certainly there, and they would all have their own additionality, long-term gains in productivity, school and cognitive attainment, jobs in the value chain outside of agriculture, further along in terms of trade, marketing, and processing. Social protection transfers, unconditional cash and conditional cash transfers have, from what we can see from the World Bank database of 120 countries, are the most likely to actually reach the poorest households in any given country, the quartile 1 and quartile 2. And on the right-hand side, the richest have the least benefit from unconditional and conditional cash transfer. School feeding, it turns out, is actually an in-kind transfers of food, and other direct transfers are one of the better ways in lower middle income countries to get resources into the hands of the poorest. That's down below. Now, you can't necessarily exclude quartiles 4 and 5, relatively wealthier households, from such programs, because political buy-in can sometimes be really an important issue for acceptability and sustainability of these programs. But countries have to think through the trade-off between targeting, the cost of targeting, and the effectiveness of transfers to the poorest. So finally, we argue it's really important to keep the goal in mind, which is transformation. That's where we want to go. And as you saw, there are a lot of steps, a lot of things that have to happen to achieve that goal. But we also believe transition steps, almost small steps, can be done immediately. And they are steps that will take us, if done quickly and appropriately, in the right direction. And these can very well be part of the dialogue in Ethiopia. Number one, we would argue, is resolve policy distortions and incoherence, where you have policies in one ministry pushing in one direction and policies in another ministry pulling in a different direction, actually working at odds. If at the end of the day, your common goal is to nourish everyone in Ethiopia with foods that are sustainably produced, then we have to do some kind of review, policy review, sector review, to understand where actions are incoherent and what could be done to make them more aligned towards the common goal. Identify multi-wing targets, right? Because this is a complex multi-sectoral agenda, we have to frame it not just in terms of improved nutrition, not just in terms of improved agriculture. There are many constituencies. There are private sector winners here. There are education, there are health, there are soil and water management potential winners here. Trying to identify where actions have multiple simultaneous benefits that can be measured and documented will make the selling, the policy agenda, the selling of these activities easier to do. Leverage existing and planned interventions. We're not talking about starting from scratch. Identify where there are already best bets and actions that seem to be working in the right direction. And then can small additions or small tweaks make them better able to address the human and planetary health benefits simultaneously? And those first three were all things that have to happen at national and subnational level. But it's important for Ethiopia to have its voice in intergovernmental and global initiatives in this space. Ethiopia's concerns around climate change, around water resource consensus, have to be heard. They have to be part of the science to policy agenda that the rest of the world is grappling with. And Ethiopia's place at the table is going to be really important in that agenda. 2 last slides. Improved diets are possible. I've put lots of challenges on the table, and that's relevant because there are challenges. But as part of this foresight activity, we commissioned some modeling to look at what could be. And this map just shows that shifts globally towards an affordable flexitarian diet, not a vegan, not a vegetarian, but a flexitarian, which means small amounts of animal source foods, fish where you like, lots more fruits, veg, smaller animal source foods like dairy, eggs, and much less red processed meats, packaged foods, oil, sugar, and so on. With higher income growth, 50% cut of food loss and waste, this is the shift. The diets, those healthy diets that result from that package of changes between 2017 and 2015 could cut the cost of a healthy diet. Pretty much everywhere around the world, even in low and middle income countries. Of course, everyone's eyes is zoomed in on Ethiopia, where actually it proves in this one scenario that Ethiopia doesn't benefit as much as other countries. But that means we have to play with these scenarios. We have to look at what is going to work for Ethiopia. How can the modeling work to achieve a more affordable, healthy diet? But my point in showing you that map is not that Ethiopia is going to have trouble, quite the contrary, but that solutions proposed can in the future result in cheaper, healthy diets for everyone. So let's move beyond the traditional, conventional, fragmented approaches to policy making and investment. We need to significantly address the trade-offs. There's going to be economic and political and social trade-offs that have to be tackled transparently. There's always costs, but the benefits of doing this well far, far, far outweigh the costs. That has to be calculated and communicated, and the argument appropriately framed. And Ethiopia has already engaged in this process of dialogue. David Nabarro helping immensely. And I think coherent policy review, modeling, costing, the defining of multi-win benefits, and this transparent dialogue on trade-offs are the way to go. These are just the first steps. And there's a lot of evidence now that they can make a difference. So I will stop there and say thank you for all your attention. And of course, these things all need to be tailored to Ethiopia's diversity of ecologies, economies, and cultures. But this can be done, and it can be done by you with our help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. So next is Dr. Frame.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Thank you very much. It's quite very difficult to be speaking after Professor Patrick, but I'll start with what we have in terms of the background paper which is prepared for this roundtable. The title is Transforming the Ethiopian Food System, Better Diet Quality, Prosperity, and Sustainability in a Changing Climate. And you know, there is my name. I think there are multiple stakeholders who engaged, partners as well as academicians, who helped us based on the existing information in their work, what has been done in Ethiopia. And we compiled those in the last 4 weeks to present for this roundtable to help us, guide us while preparing the food system papers as well as roadmaps for Ethiopia. So I'll start with, as you know, the Ethiopian policy environment pertaining to food, agriculture, persistence, health, and nutrition is quite a lot. And both our excellencies, the ministers, have stated that there are a lot of policies that are addressing these issues. But when we see them, they need to be aligned, come together, and have a holistic view of how to transition or transform the Ethiopian system. We have a food and nutrition strategy policy. We have an agriculture growth program, as well as safety net programs, climate, and also livestock and horticulture, a lot of programs, strategies, and policies. And if these come together, I think we'd have quite a transition in the Ethiopian food system. And for this reason, we, preparing the background paper, took as the center of our approach, the nutrient-dense diets for the Ethiopians and how we could do this. To see this, we looked at what is the current situation in terms of health nutrition, as well as agriculture. And as it was stated by Her Excellency, we have reduced various forms of malnutrition in Ethiopia, but we still have some problems. We have very thin mothers, but also anemic mothers who are giving birth to very small children who are not going to be well developed as they grow on. We also have on the other side around 10 or 8 million or 10 million women who are obese and as well as overweight, particularly in urban areas. And all these are because of poor diets. And all these forms of malnutrition, be it over or under malnutrition, are forms of based on the diet. So that is why we made it a cornerstone of our areas. What do you think of what we are eating? When you look at the data existing, we saw that if children are not doing well, it was to 4%, it decreased to 12%, but we are talking about millions of children who are having diverse diets frequently during their stay. Even if you see the adult population, based on the WHO standards, it's only 2.4 of the total adult population are eating fruits and vegetables as they need 5 times a day in Ethiopia. And on the other hand, we have our adults or ourselves eating a lot of salt. The maximum is 5, we are eating 8. And this has caused a lot of problems in terms of chronic diseases. We have diabetic patients who are from 0 have reached 5%. We have also people, 33% or 50 million of our population has raised blood pressure almost. So that is quite the two opposites based on what we are eating and how we are eating these things. And not only this, recently what we have seen is that based on the WHO guideline, what the death and disability due to diet only has grown by 18% in the last 20 or 10 years. So that is quite focusing on diet and what we produce and what we do is an important issue. That's why we sort of made our guiding principles of the background document dietary, nutrient diet, nutritious, dense foods. And based on this, we looked at that it's important to focus on nutrient-dense foods that are affordable and also accessible. And if you see affordability in Ethiopia, as a recent study by our colleagues from Ethiopian Public Health Institute, together with the WFP, on the field needs and gap assessment, found out that 70%, 74% of Ethiopians are not eating nutritious diets. That is 87 million people in Ethiopia, out of the total. And that is quite, and this has also environmental sustainability issues and reliance, resilience. And these also smallholder farmers are actually creating a lot of greenhouse gas effects because a smallholder is not coming up to the environmental protection. And also have a lot of partnerships, a lot of actions that are going into diets and nutrition and agriculture, but these need to also be focused on when we are trying to transform our food system. And all these need to work together with the existing government system policies and as well as strategies so that you can make some game-changing solutions recommended to change the dietary patterns that we need to work together and use our academics and institutions to monitor these, how we go on over the next period. Based on this, I think the main objective of the background paper was to present this roundtable, high-level roundtable, so that we could get guidance, recommendations, and areas to focus on Your Excellencies and colleagues, so that we could prepare not only a food system position paper, but also a 10-year roadmap that would help us attain the Sustainable Development Goals as we have signed at the UN. So what do you mean in the food systems? What do you mean by when we are asking about there are policies issues, there are quite a transformation happening within the food system in terms of the incomes as well as urbanization. There are a lot of technologies and agro-processing industries coming up, and also increasing population. There are a lot of changes transforming what we are doing in terms of our agriculture as well as other activities. But if you see in terms of sustainable healthy diets, there are quite specific issues that we found out in the assessing the background paper. We saw that food safety is a big problem that is also related to foodborne diseases, which affect a lot of our under 5 children in Ethiopia. In addition to this, there is an issue of production and productivity diversity. There is a big issue of the diversity in terms of fruits, vegetables, and the way we are producing based on what the population we have is quite very limited, and there needs to be a change or an increase in these kind of areas. Also, as I said, smallholder factors, regenerative farming is necessary because greenhouse gases and food losses are linked to those, and we need to focus on the food losses. We have quite a number, and as far as I remember, 3-4 years ago, we are losing foods that could feed 17 million Ethiopians over a year. And that's quite a lot. And food losses, as well as emitting greenhouse gases, which we are also tackling through reforestation and others, need to be focused as within the transition of the system. And partnership, as you said again, partnership among private sector, civil societies, governments, as well as within what the government policy has is one focus area that needs our attention. So when we look at the policy, as you said, we have a lot of policies that are there, but it needs to look at synergies, how to accelerate the progress and how we should come together at what point, particularly across the sectors that are mentioned, the climate, the health, the agriculture, as well as the water and others, education, are very important. And for these, I think we need resources and we need the capacity at the different sectors of nutrition sensitive capacities that is only existing within currently at the Ministry of Agriculture and a little bit maybe in the Ministry of Health, but capacity, resources in terms of nutrition sensitive agriculture will help us guide change within the dietary approaches we are taking, but also look at the various agroecological zones. Because what we are recommending for agrarian areas might not be the same for agropastoralist or pastoralist areas. So the dietary patterns which we are designing need to also address these changes. And we say the prioritization will be game-changing ideas. And what can these be are some of what we found in the recent document that was published. We looked at what are the interventions that need to be focused on. We have found out 7 ideas in terms of marketing access. That's what we said at the beginning with the problem of access. So linkage of integrating the agriculture and diet with the market system is necessary. And I said productivity increasing, but also diversifying our productivity is very important. We need to have crop technologies. We are having shortages of seeds and different types of foods we are producing. We need to focus on those areas as well. And we need to link, as I said, link the agriculture with the current industries that's happening but including to also market, health, and education, as it was stated by Professor Patrick. And also the environment, the greenhouse gas effects and others need to be also focused, and also regulatory processes and the social protection are some of the interventions that we did, or that what we found in terms of changing our food system. Based on what we had seen in the last, based on the evidences we have potential solutions which we will be happy if you could look at these and recommend and give us your guidance or recommendations. The main point is, as you said, there are policies and programs, strategies, and everybody needs to come together to mix across sectors. And this is one of the ideas which will be given by you to transform our food system. And again, increasing the resources and the capacity of the nutrition-sensitive agriculture, according to the magnitude that are seen across the sectors, need to be addressed. Also, private-public partnership, including our partners, development partners, civil societies, and others, need to come together to sort of change together the food system. And also, what we have learned from the COVID pandemic, or resilience building and disruption of these kind of challenges, need to be focused on when we are doing the transformation of our food system. But all these will be supported by research and our monitoring and evaluation system to help us see where we are going and make the necessary changes. And we are talking about game-changing solutions and action tracks. And if we look at the United Nations Food System Summit action tracks, there are 5 of them for information. And that's where we're trying to also focus. The first 2 are more linked to nutrition and health, but there is also, in terms of boost natural positive production, is the climate, greenhouse gas emissions and others need to be addressed. And there is adequate, equitable livelihoods, which is equitable in terms of gender, age, ethnicity, and also others are covered in these action track. And also the resilience and climate and other issues are under action track 5. So we need to address all these areas to transform our food system using game-changing ideas. What do I mean by game-changing? I mean, we need actions that are, or interventions that are actionable, scalable, and sustainable in order to attain a transformed food system for our people. I'll finish with this conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will be speaking on Sokoto Declaration, which is the Ethiopian government commitment to understanding. To give you a little bit background on Sokoto Declaration, the Sokoto Declaration is an innovative government of Ethiopia commitment to understanding, which is unveiled in 2015. And on this declaration, our government has made a commitment of preventing over 7.8 million children from stunting and other forms of malnutrition, and makes them productive and grows to their full potential in the coming 15 years. And during the signing ceremony, all government leaders, especially our regional government president and also the city mayors, have signed the number of children to be prevented from stunting. So when we do the Sokoto Declaration Innovation Phase, we did a baseline survey, and the baseline survey clearly shows that there is a huge gap in terms of diet diversity and also the enabling environment. Almost all households have experienced post-harvest loss, and it's only like 3 out of 10 households are practicing any one form of post-harvest technology. In terms of food production, and also improving productivity, only 11% of the households in Sokoto Declaration Woredas are practicing small-scale irrigation, and the majority are using the surface irrigation. As you know, this is not water-efficient approach. And when we look at the diet diversity, this is the most interesting part which we found during the baseline.
it's almost none of the children have met the required 4 or more groups in terms of the diet diversity score. And it's only 1 in 10 pregnant mothers who have been able to meet the recommended dietary diversity during pregnancy. So overall, 69% of the households in Sakota declaration are food insecure. The other also determinant factors in terms of access to water supply and sanitation has been also very low. 38% of the households only have access to clean and safe drinking water. And this also predisposes a number of children to diarrhea. As you can see on the slide, 21% of children who participated in the study had diarrhea in the past 2 weeks, which means that either most of the householders do not have an adequate hygiene practice in terms of hand washing practices. As you can see in the picture, it's only less than 1% that have soap and water washing setups. And most of the households still are practicing open defecation. So WASH has a huge contribution for stunting development. So overall, all the waradas in the Sakota declaration in terms of threshold, they are above the WHO recommended threshold to consider the situation as a critical. The average is 41%, but in some of the waradas like Tanko Abargalle in Tigray, it is as high as 52%, and in Tigray, in Amhara, in Sakota, in the Tota Zora warada, it is as high as 55%, which means that every 1 of 2 children are already affected by stunting before they complete 24 months. So to mitigate this, the government has developed a 15-year Sakota declaration roadmap where 9 sector ministries work together to achieve the goal of the declaration in 3 phases. The innovation phase, which we are now concluding, and the expansion phase will be starting as of July 2021. And based on this, when we reach the most of the regions, we will be expanding the national scale up as of 2026. And we have 6 innovations that define or accelerate and also galvanize the implementation of the Sakota Declaration, which I will be briefly talking in a moment. So in the 15-year roadmap, we have 10 strategic objectives. Out of the 10 strategic objectives, 4 of them are related to agriculture sector. The first one is 100 access to food all year round. So this is an ambitious target, but it will be done if we are aiming to end stunting. The second is transforming smallholders, farmers' productivity and income. The third one is to enhance innovations around promotion of sustainable food system. I think this is the agenda of the day that we are talking about, and also zero post-harvest losses. I think these are very ambitious goals, but still part of the Sakota Declaration agenda as strategic objectives in addition to other sectoral objectives. Just to show you a highlight what we achieved in the past 2012 Ethiopian fiscal year, which is between July 2019 and also June 2020, we have been able to reach over 115,000 pregnant lactating mothers through homestead gardening and over 35,000 through biofortified crops, as well as also over 66,000 through production of nutrient-dense crops. And also milk goats have been distributed to over 56,000 pregnant lactating women, and over 358,000 chickens have been provided with feeds as well as materials for construction of chicken houses for over 71,000 pregnant lactating women. Because animal source food is a key ingredient for preventing stunting. So that's why we're emphasizing animal products as well as also vegetables as well as fruits promotion for pregnant lactating women. In addition to the household level interventions, there are also school-based interventions and also farmer trainings-based interventions for promotion of nutrient-dense products. One of the examples is the backyard gardening, which is now being ongoing in 60 schools. 40 farmers training Centers have been also conducting the backyard gardening. Distribution has been done over 7,500 for school feeding program to produce eggs for school feeding programs, as well as development of small-scale irrigations has been conducted to cultivate over 500 hectares of land, which benefits over 200 householders through small-scale irrigation, especially vegetables, fruits, and other nutrient-dense crops. And also to prevent post-harvest losses, various agricultural technologies have been implemented, including the hermetic bags, and also distribution of the cold chain trucks. 4 of the trucks have been distributed to improve the fish transportation from the Tekeze River Basin towards the major town, and also metallic silos has been also distributed to promote prevent food losses. Additionally, road is also a critical component for ensuring food system and also nutrition security, specifically for areas which have access also to the Tekeze Dam lake. We have also constructed 47 kilometers of road that links the Tekeze River Basin towards the market centers where fish is harvested from the dam, because in that area, the post-harvest loss for fish has been high, and road construction has been a very critical intervention in addition to providing cold chain trucks. In addition to mitigate the challenges, especially improving the efficiency use of water, and also promote production and productivity of livestock, nutrient-dense crops, fruits and vegetables, we conducted a water resource mapping for all the waredas. What kind of water potential do they have in terms of surface water, underground water, as well as also existing water supply facilities, both for human consumption, as well as also livestock and irrigation. In addition, a study of bank of water technologies, water and agricultural technologies that are environmentally friendly has been also conducted with the technical support from the Israeli company called Cultivate. So currently we have already identified community-based solar irrigation systems, which is appropriate for such contexts, small irrigation package for smallholder farmers, solar-powered water pumping and distribution, large-scale community irrigation schemes, and potable water treatment using new filtration, which all of them are environmentally friendly, as well as also that will be managed by the community. In addition, we are also doing the agricultural innovation technology centers, where knowledge and the skill between research institutes, universities, and the farmers, extension workers will also be extended. So the ITEC Center currently is under construction. The design is completed, and we hope some of the activities will start this year. Another innovation is the community lab. The community lab is a mechanism for testing innovative solutions before successfully scaling up in the waredas. To do this, we use a 3-step, a simple methodology called learn, reflect, and innovate. So what the community do is they will identify their problems, they will come up with the solutions, which is the community-based solutions, and they test those solutions in their community and scale up those solutions. So because of the huge dietary diversity problems, animal-based solutions and also vegetable fruit-based solutions, like keyhole gardening, goat milk, as well as also pumpkin and other products have been identified. And this is how the community also promoting their own solutions using the social behavior chain communication. The community lab will help to identify problems, come up with solutions, but at the same time, it will also bring mothers who are the direct targets, but also the influencers. As you can see around, there are a lot of males, both, some of them are husbands and others are religious leaders who are really influential in the community to support the mothers in adopting and also sustaining the behavior. So the community lab is really driving local solutions to be promoted in the community. The another innovation is the data revolution. Of course, the data revolution creates a lot of accountability among sectors, as you can see here. In addition to agriculture centers, we need to have other complementary sectoral interventions to have a better nutritional outcomes. So we have the health sector, we have the education sector, we have the water sector, we have the social protection sector, we have the road, as I already said, we have also the women and children sector to address issues of gender, children, as well as also protection and also economic benefit issues. So these all sectors will work together, but their performance is managed through performance tracking and also accountability tools. Another one is in terms of the high-level leadership commitment. The program delivery unit, one of the responsibilities is to make sure that the high-level leaders are engaged. And in Ethiopia case, as I presented in the first slide, this declaration has been led by the highest government body, and currently is also led by His Excellency, the Deputy Prime Minister, and also Her Excellency Dr. Leah is also leading this together with His Excellency. As you can see here, the Sakota Declaration has been our government agenda during the UN General Assembly in 2019, where Her Excellency, our President, has presented the Sakota Declaration for the high-level leadership there. And also, as you can see here, His Excellency also reached His Excellency the Dr. Adenisi, the African Development Bank, to promote Sakota partnership on Sakota Declaration. And also in the Africa Union Leaders Nutrition High-Level Forum, which was conducted last year, Her Excellency Dr. Leah also presented the Sakota Declaration for the high-level leaders at the Africa Union side event. So which means that engagement of ownership, engagement, and also leadership of the high-level leaders and commitment is really too important to drive such kind of initiatives. Before I conclude, in terms of financing, the Ethiopian government, development partners, and also other stakeholders are actively contributing resources for the Sakota Declaration. For instance, this fiscal year, the government from its treasury has already made commitment over $15 million, which is 460 million Ethiopian birr, and also additional 16.2 million commitment has already made by the Tigray and Amhara regional governments for this year implementation. In addition to that, our development partners are also making commitments directly or indirectly for the success of the Sakota Declaration. This includes the Big Win, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Nutrition International, Save the Children, the Sun Secretariat, as well as also other programs which are under development with African Development Bank, WFP and COICA, as well as also a joint WFP, FAO, A4NH, and IPRI are there, the critical projects that are directly being supported by these development partners. Of course, together with sectors, other partners like FAAH, Concern, GANAGE, FH, GAIN, GIZ, Transform, PHCU, and World Vision are also implementing interventions directly with sectors at regional level, which means that such kind of initiative, it really requires a broad-based partnership and also various modes of financing of the initiative. So in conclusion, Sakota Declaration is an innovative government of Ethiopia commitment for addressing the food system gaps through multi-sectoral approach to transform the food systems from learning from the Sakota Declaration and also attain a healthier diet, better nutrition outcome. The following lessons need to be considered. The first one is solutions need to be developed tailored to the local problems to ensure ownership and sustainability. Country-owned and led processes, and also multi-year, multi-sectoral program is needed to translate the solutions for the benefit of the public, especially during the first 1,000 days plus window of opportunities for ending stunting. A high-level political leadership commitment is really critical to drive any solution game changers that we bring, as well as galvanize actions at all levels. And finally, domestic and international community investment, partnership for technical and financial support is needed to come up and to implement the solutions and bring about the desired changes in the population. With this, I will acknowledge all the contributors of the Sakota Declaration, and I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sisai. So we have seen the global dimension the national dimension. Although the agenda of Sakota Declaration is a national agenda, it's a local level experience, which means we're not going to start from zero. So we have these evidences to be backed up with a discussion that will follow. So before opening for the panel, I would like to have three guiding questions. The first question goes to Berat. Berat is coordinating scale-up nutrition, and so what will be the support that we can get from SAN to scale up nutrition in terms of action and intervention? Can you hear me, Gareth?
I'm sorry, I don't think we could hear the question. I think we probably need to repeat it, please.
Yeah, so the question is, how can SAN Secretariat support country initiatives to scale up nutrition action or interventions? Is that clear?
Yeah, so I think that was a question for Gerda, am I right?
Yes.
Could you hear that, Gerda? You're on mute.
Yes, I've heard it. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Do you want me, Sandy, to respond directly?
Yes, I think so. I think what's happened. I think we're moving in. It's the sound was a bit faint then, but I think we're moving in now to the round table discussion. And I know our moderator is all set to do this, His Excellency Ngozi, but that question is directly to you. I think the idea is for you to answer it now. Yeah.
Let me just jump in and say hello to everyone. It's very good to see all of you, and I would like to compliment the organizers here, Dr. Ferru Lema, Dr. Sisai Sinamo, about the Sakota Declaration, etc. This great initiative. But my answer would be to the question is to be smart in combining agendas. Ethiopia, just like all other countries have, is still suffering from the impact of the COVID crisis, not only in the health atmosphere, but also when it comes to food and nutrition security, social protection, etc. So it is combining the how to rebuild resilience and how to build forward better. It is about a smart combination of country commitments for the Food Systems Summit that has to be developed throughout the food systems dialogues. And I think this is part of the food systems dialogues. And my good friend, David Nabarro, has been addressing this high-level roundtable dialogue as well. And I think it is making concrete commitments for the N4G, the Nutrition for Growth Summit, hosted by Japan. And the Nutrition for Growth Summit will also be a fundraising event where donors and investors and public and private institutions can make a pitch how they want to align with countries at country level to improve nutrition in a systemic way. What do I mean? Too often you hear donors, but also countries focusing on very specific nutrition programs and projects. But I would like to see more the approach of the Sakota Declaration and impact. How to bring the different players together and make them work together from the different angles. And when it comes to food and nutrition, it is about making a mind change from looking at food as a commodity at the decision-making level, and very often in the Ministry of Agriculture, towards looking at food to nourish people and to take care of the planet at the same time. And to the donors, and I'm happy to see also so many donors, I would like to say, please align amongst yourselves at the country level in order to support the initiatives of Ethiopia. And finally, and then I've also said the things that I wanted to say in my contribution to the high-level table. This weekend, the leadership of the African Commission has taken a tremendous important decision, namely to agree upon the theme for next year. So this is after the Food System Summit and the N4G. It's a commitment to focus on building resilience in nutrition on the African continent, accelerate the human and social development. And this is a commitment that is made by your country leadership and by the leadership of the African Union as a whole. And it's a huge step forward. And I would encourage everyone, bring all the agendas together. Don't start new initiatives, but integrate them. Make one investment agenda, just like is done in the Sokoto Declaration, and then align behind not only the investment, but also the implementation, measuring concrete impact in nutrition, in health, in productivity, in escaping poverty, and all other issues that you would like to see addressed. And the Sun Movement is working together with you, with Dr. Farouk, with so many civil society organizations that are extremely active and motivated with UN organizations to make this all happen in Ethiopia. And if you want me to be your strong advocate at a certain level, I'm more than happy to do, because I count on Ethiopia to have the ambition, but also the possibility and opportunity to be also a leader in this, in combining the agendas and building forward better and stronger for people, but also for the climate and the planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gerda. Then I have another question for Lores. So the question is, what do you advise us in terms of ways of engaging private sector in the area of game-changing actions?
Yeah. First of all, I think you should reach out to the Sun Business Network, and we are more than happy to connect you with them if they are not already active. But this afternoon, I was sitting in a donor platform, and I told them what I'm hearing from countries. And I said to them, you, with your experience as Norway or Germany or the United States, you know how to deal with private sector companies, how they are still perceived as part of the problem when it comes to food and nutrition and food losses and food waste and destroying the planet, and how they need to become a solution. You have experience in giving fiscal incentives, but also in raising taxes, which is already happening in over 80% of the countries. Ask donors in this meeting, but also that are active in Ethiopia, to guide and support you to get there. But make sure that when you introduce taxes on salt, on sugar, on saturated fats or something, that you loop back the income, the income of the revenues of the taxes to be reinvested in further improving nutrition or nutrition education or whatever. Don't just leave it in the Ministry of Finance. Make sure that the revenues are looped back to serve further nutrition development and improvement. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So the next question is for Dr. Kalab, who is here. What are the highest priority outcomes when you take food system, Dr. Kalam. Okay, thank you very much. So I would like to see the nutritious diet is adopted by everyone, but I would also like to see healthier diets. I would take nutritious diet here. Healthier diet is a much more ambitious goal, but for the following reasons. If we're aiming for a healthier diet, and I mean for humans as well as for the planet, then we would need to increase the production diversity, make sure that we have a diverse diet. It would also mean that we need to integrate rural markets to shorten value chains, embed safety aspects during steps from production to consumption, but also it will require us to take action against unhealthy foods. So it's important given the dynamics that we are seeing, the double burden being an issue in the country with non-communicable diseases on the rise, to widen the goal from killing nutrients, but even going beyond to make sure that a healthier diet is feasible for all. That would require then an integration of systems, not only food systems, but also other systems, like the agricultural system, the health system, the trade system, which some of us could consider it as part of the food system, but they also have their own systems. And it's important that we leverage what these different systems are doing and align it in a way that healthier diet is possible. So then that would mean that we need to start from the question, how do I make healthy diets? How do we make healthy diets available, accessible, and affordable for all? So if we start from that goal and go backwards, then we will find each and every one of us will find our roles and how to align to allow that to happen. And finally, I would say that equity is critical. So there would still be segments of the population, no matter what we do at the moment, that will not afford a healthy diet. And that's where the social protection systems, the school feeding systems, the school feeding programs could support. So an equity lens is critical. And as we are still facing the COVID-19, I think it reminded us that we need to make sure that whatever transformation that we want to have in the food system, it ought to be resilient in terms of the supply of seeds, in terms of supply of producers. Resilience should be key. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kalam. Lawrence, if you can hear me, can you tell us a little bit about the food system, please? The second question was directed to you, but I can't stop, Assistant Secretary General.
Very happy to be here and very happy to be invited to give an answer to that question. Thank you, State Minister Mendefro, Minister Dr. Leah, and State Minister Fikru. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Lawrence Haddad. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, or GAIN, and I'm also the chair of Action Track 1 for the Food System Summit, which is on ensuring access to safe, nutritious food for all. And it's wonderful to be part of this multi-sector, multi-stakeholder dialogue. And it's been fantastic. In Action Track 1, we have Dr. Ferro, who's been a big part of our Action Track 1 leadership team. It's great to have him there. And we also have Dr. Eleni Gabra-Medin as part of our Action Track 1 team. So we are quite well represented from Ethiopia in that group. I just want to congratulate the previous three speakers, which are wonderful presentations, Professor Webb, Dr. Ferro, and Dr. Sise, really inspirational. When I think of, I'm really glad that Ethiopia is participating in Action Track 1 so intensively. And I've shared with Dr. Lemma that Ethiopia needs to tell the action tracks what are the government's priorities. It needs to share with the other action tracks the lessons and experiences and learnings that Ethiopia has derived and developed. And it needs to begin to shape some of the game changers that are emerging to adapt and adopt and hopefully implement some of them in the coming 5 years. On the private sector front, what can the private sector do? First of all, small and medium enterprises are really the backbone of the food system in many countries in Africa. And I think that's the case in Ethiopia. And so we need to figure out ways of getting more finance to them. We need to figure out more ways of getting more innovation and R&D support and mentoring support. And the action track 1 is developing game changers around small and medium enterprise financing and around virtual innovation platforms for small and medium enterprises. Larger businesses with value chains and supply chains in Ethiopia need to provide workforce nutrition programs for the workers in those value chains. We know that food system workers are essential to keep food moving throughout the system and getting it from farm into markets. And yet food system workers are on the front line. Their nutrition is sometimes not very good. So we need to make sure that their nutrition, their well-being is taken care of for themselves, for their families, but for everybody else, to keep food flowing in markets, especially perishable food. Third thing is around cold chains. We are looking for cold chain solutions, which are so essential, as Dr. Cisse showed us, so essential for preserving nutritious foods, for preventing unsafe foods. Where are the low-cost, community-based cold chain solutions? And we're working with UNAP and the Cool Coalition, which is a group of private sector and government and donor agencies, to develop some really low-cost, one-stop shop cool chain solutions that bring food, healthcare, and other cooling services together. And this is very important because, as Gerda Verburg said, we need to align systems, and vaccine rollouts are going to be very big in the next 2 or 3 years. And so cold chain development for vaccines, we must repurpose those for food, and we're working on that. We're working on food safety game changers. How fantastic would it be if we could find, again, inspired by COVID-19, if we could find low cost, very fast, very cheap food safety tests for aflatoxins, for mycotoxins, all forms of mycotoxins, for E. coli. We're working with food safety companies to do just that. And let's not forget about fortification. Fortification of staple foods is one of the most reliable ways of getting nutrient-dense foods, going back to Dr. Lemma's presentation, getting nutrient-dense foods to those who most need it. And again, let's not forget biofortified crops. We want more companies to be using biofortified crops post-farm, so to get those kinds of crops that are rich in zinc and iron and vitamin A into the food system. My final point, Sharon, I will hand it back to you, is that we need companies to step up, but governments can do an awful lot to incentivize those companies. For example, as Patrick Webb said, food procurement, public procurement of food for schools, safety nets, hospitals, clinics, prison populations. What a massive demand generator that is. What a massive stimulus that is for the private sector in any country. If public procurement is emphasizing biofortified crops, fruits, vegetables, pulses, beans, nuts, eggs, dairy, that is a massive stimulus and a massive signal to the private sector. Industrial parks that are springing up around major cities in Ethiopia, make those nutritious foods industrial parks. Give utility breaks, rate breaks, tax breaks to companies to set up nutritious food processing, packaging, distribution outfits in those industrial parks. Trade regulations are stopping biofortified crops from being traded within Africa, and that's stopping big companies from buying lots of fortified crops and getting fortified crops into the system. So we need standards across international boundaries within Africa to be established for biofortified crops. And finally, most profoundly of all, really, agricultural research and development is very much geared globally and nationally to staple crops. Now, that's very important. We need to improve the productivity of staple crops. We need to improve their climate resilience. But we also need to improve the productivity of crops that are highly nutritious and have been neglected for the past 20 or 30 years. Teff, vegetables, other indigenous crops, other orphan crops. These crops are deserving of agricultural R&D to get the productivity up and get the prices down. So lots of things businesses can do, but it has to be a partnership with government. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. Very comprehensive information. So next in the list is Tom, if he can reflect, maybe taking 4 minutes. Tom?
Okay, thank you very much indeed. It's a real pleasure to be part of this meeting this afternoon. I probably go back further than anyone else in the room in looking at Ethiopia, because in 1983 I came to Ethiopia to look at the Ethiopian agricultural policy at the time for the European Commission. And then some years later, I did an evaluation of Ethiopian agricultural research for the FAO and UNDP. So like Patrick mentioned, it's just remarkable the change that has happened over the past 30 years. And I was also happened to be in Addis for the declaration of the Sekoka Declaration, which for me is hugely important because it provides a framework, a coherent policy framework for the country to work to. And I was interested to see the presentation which showed the degree to which progress is being made in implementing it. So this, I think, the fact that you have already a coherent framework in place, a whole of government framework, gives you a great start. But I think this year, with the Food Systems Summit, you have a chance to take this a great deal further. And I was delighted to see the presentation from Dr. Farouk, who's been a constant and positive element in representing Ethiopia and the Ethiopian government over quite a number of years. And I very much enjoyed his presentation also. So I think what you do have, and both Lawrence and Gerda referenced this idea of having a coherent, consistent, and long-term government vision of what it wants to do in its policy in relation to food in its broad sense, is of vital importance. And then to move on from that, it is, I think, about building the partnerships that Lawrence has just spoken about, the partnerships with the private sector, creating an enabling environment for the private sector, both SMEs and larger companies, to flourish and develop. And then, you know, a final comment that Lawrence made was about the issue of research and development, the critical importance of having research and development, which is generating the technologies. But then, of course, you have to make sure that those technologies find their way into the hands and into the fields of the farmers. So I think, just looking at it, taking a long-term view here, Ethiopia has made huge progress, but you still have huge challenges, and that was made clear in talking about the baseline results for the declaration. But you have a vision of where you want to go, and I think now is the moment to affirm that vision and really put in place the practical policies to deliver it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Tom. And next is Excellency Rhoda, if you can reflect your views on the food system for Ethiopia. Rhoda?
Yes, thank you very much. And I'd like to request you that I turn off my video because my internet is not strong. It has been on and off. You are aware that I was in Ethiopia for quite a while. And if you may not, I used to be I am a former commissioner of the African Union. And but let me start by thanking you and recognizing all the dignitaries who are around, the ministers and all those who are representing the different sectors. Now, when I was in Ethiopia at that time, we had the Transformation Agency, the Ethiopian Transformation Agency, which cut across the entire agricultural sector, but also interfaced with the private sector and the different arms of government. Now, I haven't heard anyone speak about it, possibly, and I haven't researched to know if it is still in place. Now, the presentations, as you see, attain a moving food system in Ethiopia, which is sustainable. You require a coordinated effort, a coordinated approach from the different arms of government, for the different arms of government. And I'm not sure, I don't know if it's the Agriculture Ministry which is going to do that, but I think that is very key and critical in this element. Now, looking at some of the aspects which are very critical, being at the headquarters of the African Union, I think, or housing the African Union is, I think, for you, an advantage, and you need to take advantage of the same. There is the FTA, which has just been adopted, and it has a number of aspects which require implementation. Ethiopia could take advantage of that one, and as you prepare your strategy for food system and sustainable development, looking at the planet Earth, you could influence the African Union using the different partners in Addis Ababa to see how you can really get the implementation of FTA, that is Africa Trade, Africa Free Trade Area, and take advantage of that one and supply the products, but also influence the policy orientation. I believe that maybe they haven't even come up with the detailed strategies on how they are going to implement the FTA. Then, like Tom has said, I left a lot of industries coming up in Addis Ababa, and now they have grown. I hear about them. I think you could also take advantage of that one and ensure that they have a kind of a linkage to the farmers, and then they also have a linkage to the food systems approach, because but then this has to be guided by policy. and then the policy by government to ensure that whatever agricultural related products being undertaken in these industries which are mushrooming in town, then they are also linked to the farming community, so that the growth is not only with these industries, but also the farmers. As long as the farmers have these food which are nutrient dense, they can be able also to consume some of them. They can supply to the industries and all that. Then lastly, I'd like to say that I think it is extremely important for government of Ethiopia really to work together in partnership, especially given the fact that you have the FAO which is there, and you have all these other offices which are and UNDP which are regional. If you have a well-coordinated approach, very well structured, you can be able to develop a very robust country food systems program, which can be supported by those different sectors which are food related and nutrition related and all that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. I also appreciate your memory of Ethiopia. So to answer your question, the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Agriculture co-lead the program, the food system program of Ethiopia. That's the current thinking. If it might change, the two leaders, the two ministers will have that discussion and make decision. And about Agricultural Transformation Agency, yes, the Agricultural Transformation Agency is still operating, and it will continue to operate at least for the next 5 to 10 years. So with that, I would like to turn my face to colleagues within the room. So if they have questions, comments that can help us synthesize the program document, so the floor is yours. Any questions? Okay, so it means everything is clear. So the presenters and the panelists did very well. I would like to highlight a few things before calling upon Her Excellency Dr. Leah to close the session. We have many evidences here and there. So it might require us to synthesize those documents. For this to happen, I would propose, the decision is left to Ministry of Health and Ministry of Agriculture, but my proposal is the current task team will continue to deliver on this synthesis and then share that as we move along. And Minister Omar and Minister Leah are expected to establish a multi-sectoral forum or whatever the name would be. So we need actors more than these two ministries. So the establishment should also be mainly on voluntary basis, and in institutions who do really would like to collaborate with a very good collaboration behavior, who do really take this as a shared vision, can come into picture. So the other thing is, we would like in this establishment of multi-sectoral, we are going to have, we need to identify partners and allies that can help us develop the document and do the implementation. So in these partners and allies, we should look at a public sector, private sector, civil society organizations, bilateral and multilateral organizations, academia. So this multi-stakeholder forum should engage all these actors, because the food system program requires multiple actors, the action of multiple actors and financiers as well. So once we have these actors, technical team that develops the general framework, I expect the framework will lay out a short-term action plan, a mid-term action plan, and a long-term action plan. So in that action plan, and the program document might require us to refine the current policies and maybe strategies. Sectoral ministries are refining their sector-specific policies and strategies that can help the next 10 years. But multi-sectorial dimension might need a collaborative type of policy that might take more than one sector or one ministry. So the across-sector working relationship and modality might be redefined or defined in this process. So those are what I would like to highlight for the leaders of the two sectors. And I highly appreciate the presenters and the panelists who gave us a very good insight, a very broad aspect of what we are thinking Ethiopian food system. So now we have the global background, maybe the regional background. Now we are going to develop a national program document. In this process, I expect the panel and the sun can help us a lot technically in terms of refining these documents. So your support is highly appreciated. What you presented is very useful, that can be used as an input in developing the program document. With that, I would like to invite Dr. Leah to make a concluding remarks. And then if the organizers do have announcement, they can do it later.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mandefro, and I would also like to really thank all the presenters, both virtually and in this room, and also the participants for the really rich ideas and discussions that have taken place in this high-level roundtable. It's clear that it's such ideas that can become concrete actions to transform any areas we want to transform, and especially in this regard, to transform the food system in the country. Such dialogues that can really come up with concrete actions to bring systemic change are really critical. So I think we had really a great start in this high-level dialogues, and there are many things that are already on the ground, as was mentioned in all the different presentations and discussions, that have brought substantial progresses. But to move to the next level and really address multiple challenges we are still facing, there is a lot that needs to be done, which may be in terms of policy level, including realigning or revising existing policies to bring synergy to the change that we want. Could be coming up with new interventions or innovative interventions that need to come onto the ground, and also coordination of the different actors within the government and the private sector, development partners, and all on the ground to really also synergize again the work that's being done. In terms of, I think, the way forward, as Dr. Mandefro indicated, I think it's critical on the multi-sectoral coordination, and we may discuss this further, but my take on this is that we do have these multi-sectoral platforms that are really engaging progressively, intensively in this food and nutrition improvements. We have the National Food and Nutrition Coordination Body and the Sokotra Declaration, which is engaging almost close to 11 sectors working together to bring this change. So I think building upon what's existing and really looking at what are the game changers that we need to look at the way forward would be really critical. So for the way forward, I think I also would like to really ask development partners to continue providing their technical and financial support, especially for this upcoming in-country dialogues, which are critical to refine those ideas that we need to define, and also ask the global community, the global panel and the UN and action track leaders to support this Ethiopian position paper development technically on the way forward, building on what has been started already. And I think for today's successful panel, I would really like to thank the global panel for providing both technical and financial support to make this a success. I also would like to acknowledge and appreciate the AYNH, the International Food and Policy Research Institute, for availing Dr. Namukolo, who has supported the working group in the write-up of this background paper, which was presented today, and providing the printed packets as well. But most of all, I would like to thank all the participants and presenters today, both globally and in this room, for the rich discussion and the ideas that have come, that have been generated, which really will be one step ahead, which will take us one step ahead to the next activities we are to embark on. And I'm very hopeful that we will come up with very concrete, actionable items that can bring sustainable change in the food systems of the nation. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So that's the closing remark from this side, and from those who are online, I would like to ask John to make the closing remark. John, please.
Okay, well, it's been an extraordinary afternoon. I'm not always very silent in these meetings, but I've been so impressed by the contributions of everybody that it's been really a very exciting learning experience for me. It's absolutely clear that there could be good cooperation, not just between the global panel, but the various summits that are coming up, and David Nabarro's initiative. But Ethiopia has startled me today by the importance of the contributions, by the depth of those contributions, and indeed the perception of how we should move forward. So I think on behalf of the global panel, we really do stand ready to help as much as possible. We are going to be around. Sandy and her team and her advisor, like Patrick Webb, are utterly prepared to help as required. So I think it probably just requires me to say thank you all very, very much for organizing this. It's been a wonderful afternoon, and one that I really feel has made real contributions to the future. So I think that's enough for me. The global panel is going to be continuing through to the various summits, and I think that we will be available to help up until the summits, but also I think the reality, and the panel has discussed this, available to help after the summits have reported. So thank you all very much from me, and it's been a great afternoon. So thank you.
Thanks so much, John. And we appreciate the encouraging note, and we also appreciate your commitment to continue supporting the Ethiopian food system. So with that, we will end our formal discussion.